According to market mix modeling, audio ads are 3.5 times more effective if they use stats, like 3.5 times.
Market mix modelling knows that everything is measurable. Right now, we are tracking your pupil dilation, galvanic skin response, and general levels of arousal, and determining the effectiveness of this ad.
Or if you want to get serious about measuring effectiveness, talk to Mutinex. They're the world's leading SaaS provider of market mix modeling. Marketers, think of it as a growth co-pilot. Mutinex. Make better decisions.
I do a lot of stuff from bed, like just go and everyone goes quiet. It's easier to get 2 hours when you're in bed, and it's like you just sit down, it's all right, then once you do it, kind of start to render things and experiment with things, and all of a sudden, like 3 hours later, 4 hours later, I have a story. My main tool is my phone.
Adam.
Good, Brent.
Would it be really cliched of us to open up a new season of Black T-shirts and, talk about AI?
I don't think it would. Well, yes, it would be. But I'm not that interested in AI.
You're not?
I'm not. No, well, I am, but only in the same way as I'm interested in the air we breathe. It's so fundamental to everything that I think what sits above AI is still the creative process. It's still about how humans interact with each other. And I think if we can take that layer above the actual technology, then I'm interested.
Well, luckily, Adam, today we can talk to someone who can really help us with that very topic. We're going to talk to PJ Pereira, who is, who made his name in a more traditional creative sense with his own agency, Pereira O'Del, but has gone on to do some really interesting things in the AI space with his agency called Silverside, which are doing some really interesting things in the AI space. And as you said, really bring creativity to the space versus just using it as a tool, like many people are. So really excited to talk to PJ. Here he is. Hello, PJ. Welcome to Black T-Shirts. Are you wearing a black T-shirt?
I am going a little bit against the grain. I'm wearing a gray polo.
Polo. It's not a shirt. It's not a T-shirt. It's in the middle.
No, he's a polo. Yeah, I'm just breaking the rules.
This is a first, and this is somewhat uncomfortable for all of us because no creative where their salt wears a polo, surely.
And PJ, joining us from San Francisco?
I'm actually in Greenwich, Connecticut, almost in New York, but not really. I can scream. I can be heard in New York or 2 blocks from where I am, but I'm in Connecticut.
But you're a San Francisco guy, right? You're there for a long time.
I lived in San Francisco for 15 years.
Yeah.
I moved to what was supposed to be New York, like close enough to New York, a few years ago to be closer. It's kind of an easier trip to Brazil to see my family and everything. And I arrived here and a month and a half later, the pandemic hit. So I put everything kind of in a kind of floating in the air. Now I can go back there, but I'm West Coast, East Coast based now.
So you moved the whole agency to the East Coast as well?
No. We had an office here in New York.
Right.
So, and I would be flying back and forth. If I can interstate in New York and interstate in San Francisco, I moved to New York, and then we both keep flying all the time. But
yeah, right. And so which is a more creative city, do you think? San Francisco or New York?
It's different. I think that the creativity in San Francisco is going more and more on the technology side of it and what you do with the new possibilities. And New York has more established classic advertising culture and everything. I'll say if you go to LA, you're going to see more of an entertainment vibe to it. And all of those things kind of really work well together. I'd like to see us as this combination of Madison Avenue, Silicon Valley, and Hollywood. So it's kind of having a little bit of all three really makes sense in my head.
And that's been the case since you were a kid growing up in Rio, right? So this is a question, but what were you like as a kid? I know you're a coder, but I don't even know what that means as a child.
Yeah, I got my first computer when I was probably 8 or 9 years old, and got obsessed with programming and loved it, and then got a job as a programmer when I was 13 years old. and it was my first job. Then worked there for almost 10 years. And then got my first job in advertising to help people figure out this internet thing had to do with.
When you were coding as a 13-year-old, were you drawing? Were you writing? Did you see that as a creative pursuit? And the reason why I ask is when you're coding, it's normally, you do one thing to make one small incremental change, then another little code something else and makes another little incremental change and so on. It's a very linear structured process.
It's kind of funny because it's, in the end, the result is logic, right? But the process to get to that logic is creative. Because you had to find ways to get something done. You create an algorithm, and once you have the algorithm, you just write it down. It's just like when you have to have an idea and then you write a script. The script is just a sequence of events, right? But the process to get there takes an idea.
PJ, that's the first time anybody has ever explained to me succinctly how coding is creative. That's really interesting. The end result is just donk, 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 donk. But to get there and to know what to put in is hard.
I also like the idea that a script is quite logical versus an idea which is more creative. Talk to us more about that, PJ, because I think often, I find anyway, people in agencies these days get very confused between what is an idea and what is a execution. I like what you said there about a script is actually just quite logical. Like talk to us more about that.
A friend of mine asked me once, how would I define creativity, which is a very big question. I don't think I can answer that with precision, but in my head, I can tell how I feel about it, right? And it has to do with your question. That is, for me, creativity is the opposite of logic as a kind of thinking. Like in a way that logic is the most efficient way to get to an answer. You ask, so how do I solve this problem? And you take step A, and then you build step B, and then you build step C, and then D and E. Creativity, but you know that eventually you're going to get there in a very precise way. You're going to land on the answer. Creativity is chaos. You go step A, then step green, then step banana, and you have no idea if you're going to get to an idea whatsoever. And you try things, I didn't get it, and then you go back to the beginning, try something else, and then you go back to, and you don't know. And it's very inefficient, which is frustrating, but it also leads to different ways, solutions that no one thought about. So I like to think about those two that way. Like the logic is predictable and efficient. Creativity is frustratingly unpredictable, but also leads to things that you haven't seen before. And there's value in all those.
And is the logic bit an input or the outputs? So if you're doing creativity in a commercialized setting, solving a problem for someone else, where does the logical sequential bit come into that?
The logic is the connection between the input and the output. It's neither one. It's like you have a problem, you want to get a solution, and the bridge is either logic or creativity. The result is not creativity of anything. Is not creativity. The result is an idea that could be logical or creative or both or none. But it's the creativity is a kind of bridge.
Your career's jumped around a fair bit in technology, kind of traditional advertising. You're now kind of making big moves into the world of AI. Where do you find the most creative zone? In my head, when I have at least 2 hours just for myself. That is it, which seems like making a joke, try to avoid the answer, but it's not. I think that one of the problems that we have in our world right now is that since the pandemic, our schedules are so controlled by meetings that goes in one hour, 30 minutes. That's not how creative brains operate. As creative minds, you need 30 minutes to warm up,
30 minutes to cool down. And in 1 hour, you can start to have something. So unless you have 2 hours of me time, either by yourself or with a partner that you feel very comfortable with, there's nothing creative that can come out of it in blocks of 30 minutes.
In advertising or traditional advertising, you've got 30-second blocks, and you can't bust that paradigm because that's how it's all bought. But in corporate culture, we've got 30-minute or 1 hour blocks because that's how time's bought. So we find it hard to break that paradigm.
And it's even worse inside corporates. I mean, corporate people are just scheduled, to your point, Adam, every 30 minutes all the time. There's no time for thinking, no time for creativity. I think that's often why corporate cultures
right.
are so devoid of creativity.
You should change your settings to 27-minute meetings only, and just see 23-minute meetings only, and just see if you can. No, don't.
But to PJ's point, you don't get creative in 7 minutes. You need a block of a couple of hours, right, PJ?
Yeah, you need time to warm up.
But I think, Brent, that's kind of what you do, isn't it? When you have your days in the agency for the whole day on a Tuesday, you take out a whole day just to focus on the creative output that you're creating, right? And maybe
which I copy from Apple. Apple's been doing that every week for many, many years. Back in the Steve Jobs days, I try and spend a day with the agency on Tuesdays so we can have good conversations, warm up, as PJ said, and sort of have a bit of time to really spend on the work. It's super challenging, I think, inside big corporates to carve out that kind of time, but it's so important that you do. Otherwise, you're just very transactional, going from meeting to meeting.
So, PJ, imagine we give you 2 hours to yourself. Would you rather be fiddling around with a pen, some code, a script? Where do you get your energy from?
I tend to sit outside if it's not too cold with my phone. My phone is where I do most of my things right now. I do my writing. I sometimes just sit down in my bed. I do a lot of stuff from bed. Like just go and everyone goes quiet. It's easier to get 2 hours when you're in bed, and it's like you just sit down. It's all right. Then once you do it, kind of start to render things and experiment with things, and all of a sudden, like 3 hours later, 4 hours later, I have a story. I tend to my main tool is my phone right now.
And when you were saying that, when you were rendering things, is that work or is that just creative projects, or is that there's no delineation between those two things?
There's no delineation. Whatever is happening in my head, and what I've seen, especially in the last 2 years, is that very rarely something relevant that happens outside of work doesn't end up becoming part of work as well. So it's an example. I spent the last 10 years almost working on a novel, right? Novel that is about artificial intelligence and Kung Fu. There are two passions that I had that had nothing to do with work. And I've been studying, playing, writing, and I wrote that for usually between 11 p.m. and 2 a.m. every day, because it's the time that I can have quiet time for myself. I did that for a long time. And by the time that the book was about to be launched, I thought, okay, I'm going to launch this and I'm going to get that out of the way and keep going the rest of my life. Then this whole AI, because I had an AI character, I decided to hear about these. Oh, you can make images with AI now, and you can make images, you can make videos. I started to play with it, did a cover for the book. I did a couple of experiments with the book and started to do videos for the book. And then, oh my God, this is actually pretty big. And the more I done, the more I thought this is going to transform the advertising business as well. And like, not more than 3 months later, we had a division of kind of another company that was just doing that.
PJ, you're talking about The Girl from Udang, right? Is that the book?
Exactly.
And I was going to ask you, did you promote it in any way creatively or not? And you just jumped to the answer straight away. That's amazing. So the book, the personal book, gave you the inspiration to start to delve into just starting that project allowed you to start to delve into this whole new emerging world of into AI. And is that normally how you operate? It's kind of a personal kind of project takes you down a stream, and then from there you build other thinking around it.
I wouldn't say that I'm not looking for that, but I'm happy that happens. I allow it to happen. I think if you think of that creative process as, let's try things and see where it goes. Sometimes you will land to something that is going to relate to what you you do. Sometimes it won't, or sometimes indirectly. I mean, The Girl from Udon was my 5th book, right? I wrote other 4 novels in Portuguese before. None of them became so important to my work as this last one because of AI, because the experience that I did to promote the book kind of made it clear for me. But the learning from the other 4 taught me a lot about characters, about story arcs, and how to build longer stories. That when we started to push more into brain entertainment, is one of the areas that we love as well. It was very important that I had those skills. So I don't know if we went that route because I felt confident because of my writing things, or if it was just a coincidence, or if I was just prepared. I don't know. And I don't care. I don't think the world is that planned. I just let things happen and see where it goes.
But it's interesting though, maybe if you weren't, doing those projects for yourself, just for creativity's sake, as opposed to doing it for a client, maybe you wouldn't have had the same level of, you know what I mean, discovery, and you wouldn't have played with it as much, and you would have been more constrained. I think it's really important for creative people to do things for themselves, right?
It lowers the bar.
Just do it for clients.
It lowers the bar to enter an emerging field, lowers the risk. You can get in there, start to play around, start to do ads on the book yourself. Then suddenly you know what you're talking about, and you can grow out from there. I think it's a really clever. I'm sure it wasn't done strategically, but I think it's a very clever thing to do.
There are 2 things that I've learned. It wasn't by design, but I've learned from doing all these other things on the side that I think are really important and really help me. And if someone listening here picks on it, it may help them as well. One is that we're in the service business, so our creative chops exist to solve someone else's problem. Sometimes, and creativity is an impulse, is that thing that needs to come out. You need to exercise it or you die, right? And someone asked me in a book event, are you going to use? I don't want to see my favorite writers using AI to write their books. In fact, I'll never do it, because for as much as I love these new technologies, I don't write to make a product. I write because I have to do it or I'll die, right? So I'm not going to let a computer take my spirit away from it. So when you're using your creativity as a service, it creates a little conflict. That what happens if the problem that you're trying to solve, or the client that is paying the bills or is asking you to do something, does not need what you want to do as a creative individual, right? Have you ever seen that guy, Cesar Millan? The dog. That's all his thing is like, yeah, you want to make your dog behave, just get him to exercise, right? So it's the show after show, episode after episode, get them to exercise. They're really good dogs. As creatives, we're like that. We need to exercise as well. We need to put that energy out so we can behave properly. Sometimes when we're lucky and we have a good reputation and we have a good brand and we have a lot of things together, those things combine. But sometimes they don't. And if they don't, and you try to force your creative impulse into a client that does not need that, it creates a massive frustration. It's chaos. It doesn't work. So if you have, as an individual, have another creative outlet where you can be exercised regardless of your tasks as a creative person, you're chill, you can behave, you can say, all right, I'm going to do this or not. And this is the idea that I think you should do. But you don't want it? Okay, you do this other one. And I'm not dying for this. Now I have energy to keep trying to convince them to do what I think is right instead of panicking because I cannot breathe right now. So it gave me tranquility to be a better creator. I think that's one of the things that gives me.
So you're not time sheeting your book writing.
It's the things that I think it gives you a longer career.
Totally. I love it, man.
Because you're not frustrated that the clients are destroying your creativity, and you can chill and look at things with a calm mindset, and then you play with it. And then the other side is that then you develop skills that will transform your work, and they eventually get together, become one, because you're just one person. You cannot compartmentalize to beyond that point. So, in the end, it works.
It also, to me, feels like time and creative output is a bit like a piano accordion. It's like you can compress it, you can stretch it, you can do whatever you want with it. But like the more busy you are potentially on the book, getting fed and feeding yourself, then ironically, the more time you'll have to solve other problems as well. Because
I feel like I'm faster when I'm writing. For example, if I'm writing a book, I heard that from mothers of young kids. It's like I'm so much faster right after I came back from a train reads. It's like everything needs to be fast because I needed to go back. I could think about the same things, have the same ideas, but it's just like my brain is much faster when I'm writing. It has another thing that I think is pretty cool is that when you're doing something creative that is not advertising and you're in contact with other creative minds from outside of advertising, you realize something that was career changing for me is that advertising does not own the right to determine what creativity is.
no.
You see people say, that's not an idea. And I look at them like, what the fuck do you know about what an idea is? You're just a small guy. You're not Pablo Picasso. You're not Spielberg. You're not, you do ads. Okay, let's put it here. You sell matrices. You sell sodas. You sell cars. You're not the biggest artist the world has ever seen. And sometimes we like to behave like if we were. Oh, this is not an idea. This is not creative. And this is a real situation here. I was shooting with one of the most incredible documentary filmmakers the world has ever seen, award-winning. So one of the biggest of all time, right? And there was a creative director sitting next to me. And kind of shooting the scene, and it's like, yeah, we shouldn't do this because it's just insane. And the director looked at her and said, I love Sensei. That's how good movies are made. And she was quiet because for her entire career, she heard that Sensei is bad. It's not how great advertising is done. And there was a film God saying Sensei is great.
That'll be Verma Herzog?
It wasn't him. It was the other one.
Okay. Hey, tell me, that's unreal. So I find it a struggle how creatives get trained still in advertising, where they get trained on, I'm going to sound like a dickhead. I'm going to sound like I'm exactly the kind of guy you hate by what you just said, but I'm going to say it anyway, because they get trained by various executions. So this is a beautiful ad. This is a beautiful script or whatever. They don't get trained on a holding thought that sits above all of those executions. They don't get trained on what an idea actually is. But as I say that, I'm cringing at myself. But what do you think of that?
I think that a big part of what we do is craft, and knowing how to do some kind of work really well makes you really good. But it also creates a trap that you start to believe that that's what great work is, instead of one of the ways that great work can teach. You know, I'm seeing people saying, "Oh yeah, a great story is a story that can be told in 30 seconds." You know, if you cannot tell that to an author, like a writer. It's like, yeah, 30 seconds. You know, to tell that to filmmakers, like 30 seconds is the breathing before singing. It takes 30 seconds, but I mean, it's not that 30 seconds is not good. I went to an event once in San Francisco. It was the 20th anniversary of Toy Story. And with the community getting together, all creatives from all kinds, just getting in the theater to watch the movie as if we were kids. Brought my son with me and my wife, and we were all there kind of watching. And all of a sudden the movie ended, and the head of the San Francisco Film Society shows up for it. "Now I have a surprise for you guys." The guys walk up, and all the guys for Pixar, all the main ones, all the guys who did Toy Story show up on screen, on stage, and start to tell stories and show videos of them trying things and taping their feet to skateboards to find how those little soldiers would walk, and it was incredible. And there was one point that John Lester, he talks about, he started talking about, you know, when they started Pixar, they had the idea for Toy Story already, but they didn't know how to manage projects. So for like, yeah, let's do a couple ads first. So to learn project management at small scale and to go for bigger projects. And they took an ad for Lifesavers, kind of the candy thing with the hole in the middle. So let's do an ad for here. And he said, it's going to be easy. Just manage project and we can test the technology and everything. And they saw a script. It's like, that's a horrible script. I'm going to rewrite the script. They rewrote the script and decided to make it. And thought, oh, it doesn't fit into 30 seconds. It's 3 minutes long, and started to chop it down when it got to 30 seconds. It does not tell any story. And then he said that in the end, he went to advertising to learn project management. And then he realized that the biggest lesson that he was learning was actually how to tell a story, to build a scene in the most compact way. There's something that writers say a lot, is that you have to learn how to start late and end early. What is the latest point in the story they can start, and the earliest point they can leave, and let the imagination tell that. And that's what I said. Doing ads allowed me to do this. When I'm writing, the advertising discipline transfers as well. I kind of write very long scenes, and then the second, third revision, okay, I have this scene. What is the latest point that I can start? What is the earliest point that I can get out? And maybe there's something that I need to include in here to make it work. My scenes are super compact because of that. That's craft. That's something that you learn, but sometimes you need to, like, you know what? This time I'm going to break all the rules. I'm going to do it differently. But you need to have mental flexibility to do this. And you can't, and it all starts by understanding that advertising people, we have no right to determine what creativity is and what brilliance is, what an idea is. We only have a contact with a sliver of what an idea is. So let's stop pretending, you know?
PJ, can you tell us a little bit about the types of ideas your agency currently has and does, and it's playing around with technology?
I will say that we are at our best, and I'm the proudest when we can balance advertising, entertainment, and technology, and some kind of innovation. I think that's when we operate at our very best. This is a Pereira O'Del kind of work. Sometimes it's just one, sometimes it's a mix of two, and rarely is a mix of all those three. But the pursuit is for those three things together, and I think that the pursuit is more important than any individual achievement. Because as a company, as a brand, the pursuit is what defines us. The work is in the past, and the pursuit is what's pushing us forward.
Brent, the reason why I'd make a crap CMO?
Risk and compliance meetings?
apart from that, it's really, really complicated, and it can also be incredibly slow and tough. For example, how do you decide how much money to put into brand spending?
Yeah, it's a big decision. And I think we've seen a lot of marketers be really addicted to the drug of performance marketing, which gives you an immediate payback. But I think you really want to be understanding the long-term benefits of brand. You need to measure that over time. And you need to also understand that if you start trading off, spending more on brand, less on performance, you need to know straight away, is that working? Is it delivering? And so you need some sort of model to do that. Without a model, I don't know how you'd even start.
Such as what?
Well, Mutinex. It's the best one out there. It's the best one out there, man. It's SaaS-based. It's really one of the most cutting-edge marketing mix models you can get. And if you have got hard questions that you're trying to confront as a marketer, I would thoroughly recommend a tool like Mutinex.
They're also the sponsor of this show, right?
Yes.
Yeah, excellent.
Tonight I'm speaking at a conference on AI. Can you just give me a headline? What's the most interesting thing I can say about AI to impress a bunch of marketers?
I'm doing that tomorrow, so I have that answer. I'm telling you what I'm going to say tomorrow. So here's what I'm saying, talking about pursuit, right? I started my career as the internet guy at a very traditional advertising agency. At that time, 25 years ago, pursuit was what is an attractive idea, right? At some point, there was a generation that came from print and had to find what is a moving idea, right? So like, okay, an idea that cannot be just a print ad that is moving. There's more. And then, there's a whole storyline that we can tell. There's a little script. There's a generation, Bill Burnback world that okay, this is what a moving idea. Then there was my generation that felt like, what is an attractive idea? And it's an idea that kind of hears and takes commands and finds. And I think that's something that took a decade at least to actually finally understand, like the subservient chickens of the world. It's like, okay, this is an attractive. I see that's an attractive idea. But I was president of the jury at Cannes one year, and we were discussing that, and we had two ideas competing for the Grand Prix, and one of them was very attractive. The other one was just a series of films, and half of the jury felt like, oh, these films are better. We like it better than the attractive one, but the attractive one matches our definition. So they end up voting for the more attractive one and seeing a video is not attractive. Just because you press play, it does not mean that it's attractive. 6 months later, YouTube was born. Right? And years later, Netflix was born. And we missed the opportunity of telling the world that pressing play, on-demand stories are part of what interactive storytelling can be.
Was that BMW Films?
No, it was before BMW Films.
Okay.
It was a long, as funny because I remember the name of the idea was The True Adventures of Chad. The guy who was so into Super Monkey Ball Deluxe that he decided to live in a ball. That was the name of the idea. I still remember.
I love it.
So, but that is the past. So this is, I think that we found what a movie idea is. We found what an attractive idea. I think the world understands what an attractive idea is. We are kind of starting to understand what a social idea is. But I think the next challenge is, what is an intelligent idea? What is an idea that has its own ideas? I don't know. And I think that's the most fascinating question of my career.
Yeah.
What is an idea that has its own ideas?
And how far away from that do you think we are, PJ? Is it getting close? Is that quite far away? Like, where are we at on the curve?
I think we're 10 years away from realizing it, but we are on it already.
And you said earlier this idea that you wouldn't write a book with AI because your creative spirit needs to be expressed, and so you got to do it yourself. How do you reconcile that with this idea of the intelligent idea, or using AI in a really, making it really central to the creative process and creative output? How do you reconcile that?
I don't know. I think that is part of my anxiety, my enthusiasm comes from looking at that conflict. It's like there's something very powerful in it. Yeah, I don't know if you know who Nicholas Negroponte is, kind of guy who founded the MIT Media Lab. I did some work with him 10 years ago or so, and he was telling me how programming, going back to the beginning, coding was humanity's first experience on thinking about thinking. It was the first time that we had to break thought into steps so we can tell the machine to follow it. And it really taught us a lot about thinking. I think that this age of AI as a creative output, not as only as a tool, but AI as an output, is going to allow us to think about creativity in a way that we are going to have an understanding that we never had. I think it's the first time that we have a chance to create creativity. We have done a little experiment at Silverside, that is our AI agency, that took something that came from my book Experiments. And we would take a chapter of any book, let the author kind of copy and paste the chapter, enter kind of a couple of things. So this is the name of the book, and this is the story is a sci-fi story, or it happens in the past. It picks a kind of a loose visual style, and then the whole thing, the machine created a visual book that spins and lets you and hypnotizes you into the story. And the result of that is nothing that you could have predicted, because the mix of the input that the author had and the story and whatever the machines decided to do by themselves. So in a way, that was creating creativity. We created a machine that creates things. I don't feel less creative because we created that, because I still feel like, oh, that's a pretty cool idea, right? And I like what came out of it, but it's not what we had seen before. So I feel it's somewhere in that blurry area that we are going to start to do. You can see that in video games, how the video game industry is looking at this. You know, they have always been seen as like video game is like, yeah, this is like movies, but interactive and with less brilliant writers and less incredible acting. And this is kind of what video games became. It's like, yeah, you lower the level on acting, lower the level of writing, but make it visually compelling and make it interactive. So that's a video game. Okay, people got enough. That's enough. Now with AI possibilities, they are starting to plan again, giving the non-playing characters enough of a thought DNA that they can react and play with it more than with those tiny little scripts that were rushed into the story and no one really thought about them. You give them a voice and give them a context, and they're gonna do it. What are they going to come up with? We don't know. That's creating creativity.
That's fascinating. So all the little NPCs in the background will start to be more demonstrative and get more involved and could become the main player or could become whatever because they're easier to code, basically. Is that what you're saying? The AI is going to make it easier to code those people to do something interesting.
Because you don't necessarily need to code everything. You code that you exist.
Yeah.
Give them a DNA, and then that DNA is going to vote. I keep hearing people talking about, yeah, no, this AI is not really intelligent. It's not that. It's all it is mathematics, and statistics, and everything. If you ask a cosmologist about what a human being is, it's just like, yeah, there's nothing special about it. It's just atoms spinning around each other and kind of making matter. So yeah, that's we're nothing. We're just dust, and we're not as special as we think we are. For sun, our lives and our intelligence and our ideas are pointless, right? So I think that once you create things and give them a DNA, a thought DNA, and it can evolve into other things, it's fascinating what can come out of it, but we don't know. And I'm telling you, that was I spent 10 years thinking about this before it finally got to this, because of my book and the characters that I read this book that melted my brain once that the guy saying that life is mostly a combination of some kind of entity being able to multiply itself, evolve, and eventually be self-aware. But the self-awareness is the least important thing, because plants are not self-aware. So multiplying and evolving is more important. So if you create an NPC that can multiply and give them coding skills and gives them analytics skills to see, okay, I perform better here this way than that way. Who knows? Maybe the NPC is going to start to multiply itself and it's going to jump to another game and take over and we're doomed.
Adam, did you get what you needed?
The Matrix starts.
The Matrix, exactly. Adam, did you get what you needed for the panel?
I didn't quite get what I needed for the panel. All I got was a thought-provoking question of we're at the verge of an idea that can have ideas. Deal with that. But if I just pose that question to them, they'll just look at me like this. With all due respect. But I might just go back to that one more time and just ask for so right now, maybe put it into the here and now.
But just on the here and now, just go with that for a minute. So PJ, I think I like earlier you were talking about the pursuit of things. I like what you just laid out there as the pursuit of ideas. You can have ideas. I think is super interesting. But are we going to have to wade through a whole bunch of really mediocre stuff because like anything, I guess, like advertising, like movies, like, there's going to be people who have taste, who can craft, who are going to be able to use AI to create these, incredible levels of creativity you're talking about. And then isn't there going to be a bunch of just sort of shit out there that's really easy to make and very, very sort of generic and that's going to be bad, right? Like, I mean, how do you think about that?
I think that it's the opposite of we're going to have to wait. I think with the rhythm that the technology is evolving, it's a race, right? Right now, the technology is not incredible. It's not perfect yet, but it's going to get there, and it's getting better at a faster pace than we can get better at that technology. So instead of catching up this is the first time that I see the artistic community, instead of moving the technology forward, we are trying to catch up and we are not getting there because the technology keeps getting better. As we reach a certain level, technology leaps forward again. So I think that we were talking before how craft is critical for this. It's critical on our craft or what we do, right?
Yeah.
If we wait for the technology to solve the craft issue, once it's there, we're going to be so far behind, it's going to be too late. That's my fear, my anxiety. So I'm rushing. I'm doing this in life. I go to bed at night, try to do tell my little stories and experiment with these things because I want to make sure that the technology is completely ready for prime time. I'm ready for the technology as well. Otherwise, it's going to take me too much time to get there.
PJ, do you think by the end of, let's say the end of next year, most film production will be done by AI in advertising?
I'll tell you this, by the end of next month, there's going to be no film in the world being done without AI.
Yeah.
It's different. At least some level of AI is on everything.
What about by the end of a year? Do you think by the end of a year, most advertising will be done by AI and most of the advertising process?
By the end of the year, every piece of advertising is going to have
AI.
An AI scene or two, unless there was a reason not to have. By the end of the year, you're going to need to have a reason not to have anything AI.
Yeah, to me, it's like the digital camera, isn't it? It's just it's all going to become AI'd very, very, very soon. Like, this is going nuts. So what we're about to talk about a piece of your work now that you did 3 months ago, which is the Coca-Cola remake. And we'll put it on YouTube. But it's already dated.
Yes.
In terms of its visual and so on. Talk to me about that. Why was that a paid for project, and how did that come about?
They called it and what they asked us to do was very simple. Saying, see, remember those trucks, the caravan, they're going to go all around the world. We don't need. We already have a big idea that is those trucks. And this is the kind of thing about example about our obsession with what an idea is. They said, we already have an idea. Those trucks are an idea. People love it. They're an icon. We don't need to overthink and rethink about the stories. Can it help me find a way to bring them to life that rescues what was in the past, but in a way that we couldn't do today, that we couldn't do last year? But yeah, let's take a look at that. And we found a little way to, we look at that, we look at the original script that I knew by memory. I remember that the original spot, there's just these trucks driving through a small town. And as it drove by, people kind of smiled and all the lights went up and kind of almost like the trucks were starting the holidays, right? It was lighting everything you see. It's kind of started with the trucks. And I thought, all right, I know what to do. Let's show what happened before, what happened after this. So people can have the full picture. What was before and after this? And all right, so let's show someone open a bottle of Coca-Cola because its product is there. And that sound of the bottle echoed in the North Pole and woke up the creatures of Christmas. There are the reindeer, the polar bears, and the stars, and also woke up the trucks that are now a creature of Christmas. And then they drive away from the North Pole and all the way to the cities around the world, and they drive through the town. Then you see second act is to see them driving through that city they're familiar, and see them blinking on and start all the lights. And then what happens after that? Now it goes to all the cities around the world. Let's show them in the East Coast, in the West Coast, in small town, in big town, in Asia, in North America, in cold and warm weather. And it made it at a scale that if we had to do that in a traditional way, it would have cost like tens of millions of dollars. And they wouldn't have spent that. But with that, we could do it. But then there's a trick. As we're doing, we try to play with people there, kind of making faces like, yeah, it does not look right. So we took down all the people, put only animals, only critters there because they look better than the human beings. And in our version of that, there's no human beings because we did not like the result. So we narrowed down to keep the craft as good as we could. And it worked. It was one of the most successful spots in the history, holiday spot in the history of Coca-Cola. And I say that not to brag, and because it wasn't an incredible idea. No, it wasn't our idea. The idea were the trucks. The idea come from the 80s. And that's an incredible idea. We're humble enough to say, you know what? We don't need to put another layer of idea on top of an idea that is already so incredible. If you look beyond the chatter in the industry and see what people are talking about, the chatter in the industry, there are all the haters, the AI haters in the world. If you see the comments on the spot, they're not talking about how incredible the spot was. They're not talking about how horrible the spot was. You're talking about how much they love the trucks. And I'm fine with that.
What did you learn during that process? Maybe, and I'm interested what you learned about the craft of using AI, and I'm interested as well what you learned about AI ethics and governance. And if there's anything succinctly you can tell us on both of those two things, that'll be amazing.
You have to be okay with the fact that your release is going to be outdated already. You have to come to terms with it. Because when we started the process, we were kind of rushing, trying to get it done. So when you had best version of AI, most modern things that we could, but we could not anticipate Christmas. If it could, that spot would have gone out in the beginning of October. In the beginning of October, it would have been much more innovative than it was in the beginning of November, which was more innovative than it was the beginning of December. By January, it was already dated. Thankfully, it stopped running by then. And by January 1st, I sent an email to the guys at Coca-Cola saying, hey, remember that we took out all the people, all the human beings, because it wasn't good enough? Look at this. And I sent them a bunch of images that I generated with human beings grabbing Coca-Cola bottles using some new technology, and it looked amazing.
What did they pay, PJ? What did they pay for that ad?
Pay?
How much was it?
It was a tenth of what it had cost to do it in a regular way.
So okay, that fair enough.
You do your math there. You do your math there.
Well, you did create a very big ad, traveling all around the world and trucks and anyway. Hey, and anything, so you have to be, I like that. You have to be okay that it's going to be dated by the time you put something out. Actually, maybe we have to get on. We have to play you. We did a pub test. We showed a whole bunch of people in Australia that ad, and we asked their impressions, and this is what they said.
The pub test is brought to you by Dearly, the insights platform where ideas go to grow.
So the Coca-Cola holiday ad, what do I think of it? I actually think it's hilarious.
What did I think of the ad? Oh, look, AI, it's pretty good for AI, to be fair. It doesn't look too spooky, like generally these things look really freaky. I mean, they got the fingers right on the hands. I just think it's kind of a cop-out. I mean, does Coke really need to penny pinch that much that they're not going to pay real actors to make a Christmas ad?
It's painfully obvious that it's made with AI. I shudder to think about the amount of human hours that have gone into trying to correct this train wreck.
I do know that it was made out of AI. You can just tell. But I don't mind at all, and I think that it's so funny because the Coke's tagline and Coke's whole positioning is this real magic. So the irony that it's the complete opposite of this. It's made in AI, so it's not real at all.
It was pretty good, though. I mean, some of the faces, it's that kind of weird hover on the faces that you can tell.
What do you think about Coke making their ads in AI? I think it's lazy and ineffective.
I think it's hilarious and a really cheeky, a tongue-in-cheek approach to creating a Christmas ad.
Coca-Cola can do whatever they want. I think what I don't like about it is it seems cheap from a big brand. They should be able to afford to do something a bit more thoughtful and just something a bit more exciting, really.
No, definitely doesn't pass the pub test.
If they're taking a tongue-in-cheek approach, tying into the real magic, then I'm here for it.
Yeah, look, I guess that passes the pub test.
Yeah, nothing very different from what I've heard. I mean, I'll say this. Most people are looking at a combination of 3 different ads. My personal, the one that we did, and it was our personal choice, we took humans away because we didn't like the way they looked, right? So the technology wasn't there. It's starting to get there, but it's not completely there yet. And I respect all those opinions. I think that in the end of the day, for me, you have to, the way I was looking at that, there are 2 main components of this. One is that Coca-Cola is taking a step forward to understand what this new kind of craft will be. And there's only one way to learn a craft is by trying to correct it, right? If you don't try, you can say, yeah, that's the whole thing about waiting that we're talking, right? It's like, you can wait and see, and then someone else is going to be brilliant at something, and then you're going to have to catch up. Coca-Cola doesn't want to do it. We don't want to do it. So we actually are doing this because of the craft. These one didn't even attempt to have an original idea. We banked on an idea that we know that the world loves. That is the most unvirtual idea ever, that are the trucks themselves. Right? But it's still funny to see how people talk. Yeah, this is I've heard the real magic thing I heard. That's like, let me tell a secret.
It's not real.
They were not real.
It's all make believe. It's all advertising.
Don't you think though, PJ? I don't know if you saw this as well. In the US and other markets, but I feel there's a reaction just to the ad itself that's very different to the reaction once I know it's AI.
Yeah,
do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think that once they think about AI, there's a reaction to AI.
Yes, correct. Versus the ad itself.
Coca-Cola, that's like we're gonna step into this minefield, right? But they had confidence that in the end of the day, the idea there is the trucks, is the caravan, and people love the caravans, and that's it.
Yeah,
right? They love the caravan. There's nothing virtual, nothing artificial reality, and it's as real as it gets.
When you got a magazine cover and you say it's done in they use Photoshop. It's like, oh, what? They use Photoshop? Before you say that, they're fine with the image. I do think there's just something where we just don't like change, or we don't like to feel like we don't understand what's going on. And as soon as we don't understand what's going on, then we treat it skeptically, and we don't judge it on its craft or on how it makes it feel. We judge it on the process. And if the process is unfamiliar, we don't like it. And again, I think, PJ, I think that'll just naturally disappear as it becomes a foundation of modern society, which it's only about a week away from becoming.
I see that. When I see the process from the inside, I feel more creative when I'm working in a pipeline or in an AI kind of project than when I'm working on a regular project. Because I can have ideas all the time.
I bet.
At the very day before we have to ship, I have an idea that is truly brilliant, that is worth stopping doing. I'll stop everything, I'll do it, and it'll make it to the final thing.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's interesting. That lets you keep iterating and lets you keep making it, as opposed to, I've got a deadline, I got to produce the thing, I got to ship. You know what I mean? I think all the best creators I've ever worked with want to keep making it better, keep right up to the very day it launches. And it's interesting that AI can let you do that. I think that's an interesting. I've thought about that.
Think about it this way: the way that the creative process is structured today, that is, we were educated to believe that that's how incredible things are done, right? That is, you have a brief, you talk to a client, you write a brief, you brief the creatives write a script, the script is sent to multiple directions, then they bring treatments. The treatment is turned into a storyboard. The storyboard is turned into a shooting board. Then you shoot scene by scene, then you edit, and then you color correct, and you do all the other post-production, and then you ship, right? That is how we think that things are, and how we learn that collaboration step by step is the way to go. This wasn't invented by creative people. This was created by a guy called Henry Ford.
Yeah.
It's industrialized creativity. If you put it this way, there's nothing special about it. There's nothing genius. There's nothing about the craft. We're just actually saying that, you can only be creative from this point to this point. After that, you shut down your creativity and just gonna need to hope that it goes well all the way to the end, and then you pick the right person.
It's super interesting. When you describe it like that, it sounds like step A, step B, step C, step D, not what you said before, step A, step green, step banana. It feels so linear and so predictable. If you're looking for insights, don't do a pub test, go to Ideally.
I thought we didn't believe in research.
We don't believe in bad research.
We don't believe in research. It takes forever. It's loads and loads of PowerPoint charts.
Well, because the speed of culture moves in hours, not weeks.
Yeah, so you need research to be fast. You need to be fluid. You need to be co-created. You need everybody to be able to get in on it and get the responses straight away.
100%. And with Ideally, they turn it around overnight with their fantastic digital platform.
You know what I really hate about research?
What's that?
I hate the fact that it takes forever. It's really expensive and clunky. And then it relies on some poor young sod to be speaking the bleeding obvious from the research really enthusiastically. Everyone gets bored and the insight gets lost.
I hate the stale sandwiches.
You're talking about the focus group.
Yeah. Ideally is an insights platform that lets you create with confidence. You can test ideas and innovations overnight and affordably. Visit goideally.com to find out how Ideally can unlock insights for your business. Just taking that thought for a minute, how have you rethought about some of those processes and ways of working and structures within your own agency? How are you changing all that, given all this experimentation you're doing with AI?
There are two things that we're doing at Pereira O'Del. We're bringing the elements to it to change the steps with themselves, and then we created Silverside as a separate agency that starts from with a blank page of how we operate, which is stressful because we don't know how we're going to do anything. It's like, we'll get a new project. We don't have the luxury. Okay, these are the 7 steps. Like, it may be 3 steps, it may be 7 steps, it may be no steps. It's just one crazy jump. But Silverside is by itself is an experiment that we start every process, every project we have to define the process to get it done, and we do it. And once we learn that something is kind of happened a couple, but we can identify a pattern. We take that and bring to Pereira O'Del. So Silverside is committed to the innovation side. Pereira O'Del is committed to the ideas.
Silverside doesn't have timesheets, I bet you.
No.
How does it get paid?
It gets paid by project, and we can, because we can do things so much cheaper than the traditional way. We'll say this is what we can guarantee that we can do it with this, and in general, they're more than happy to pay, and we're okay.
It's kind of interesting, isn't it? It's
commitment that we are going to do it this way, and given the limitation of the technology.
It's kind of interesting, though, isn't it? That the great dilemma that we hear a lot about in the advertising business is, we charge for time, right? We've turned it into a charge for time kind of model. And yet, what you're doing is Silverside. Some things that used to take a lot of time, you can now do really quickly. It's kind of interesting that can this maybe liberate us from this idea that it's not about how long things take. We should be paid for the value that the idea creates. It's interesting that AI might actually
be the
facilitate that. I think a lot of people are worried that's going to destroy it, right? A lot of people
it might liberate us from that. It's great, Brent.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Like that, I've never thought about it like that. I think a lot of people worry that because we get paid by time, if we do things faster, we get paid less, right? Whereas if maybe it can liberate us to focus more on the idea and get paid for the value it creates. What do you think on that?
Right now, I can experiment 10 different things. I'm working on a project right now that we are trying to define what is the art direction for it, right? In a regular way, we will need to do boards and things and show it and kind of get it approved with the client. Then it's an animation, so it's kind of complicated. Once you pick the style, because of the way we're actually doing the entire spot 4 different times.
Yeah.
And then we pick which one we like more, and then we fine tune it, and we do all the post-production of that. But we're doing the same spot 4 times, and that's totally fine.
So PJ, thank you for sharing us with your proprietary process of A to banana to grape. You should be able to monetize that process beautifully. That's a great example of it. We're going to have to wrap up, I think, Brent.
I know. It comes back to when PJ was talking about 30 seconds isn't enough time, to tell a story. I feel like an hour isn't enough time to do a podcast with you, PJ, because we could keep talking to you for ages.
Hey, PJ, we get all of our guests to it's called Black T-shirts for a reason. We get all of our guests to sum up their creative philosophy and put it on a black T-shirt, and hopefully we'll then send you that black T-shirt. PJ, if you're going to sum up your creative philosophy and put it on a black T-shirt, what would it be?
Maybe. Yeah, my entire creative process.
That's great.
Beautiful.
That is a great answer. PJ, been a real pleasure. Thanks for taking the time to talk to us today on Black T-shirts.
All right. Thank you guys very much.
At Black T-shirts, we like ads featuring supermodels. And the most supermodel is the Mutant X market mix model.
Picture this, if you will. A little computer with a little algorithm. And inside that algorithm is a market mix modeling program. That's Mutant X. Hello.
Or if you want to get serious about measuring effectiveness, talk to Mutant X. They're the world's leading SaaS provider of market mix modeling. Marketers, think of it as a growth co-pilot. Mutant X, make better decisions. Dude, I'm so glad we're doing the panel tonight.
Oh, mate.
We're like...
Hey, so I'm going to have to say this. I think in all of our seasons, that has been the episode I've enjoyed the most.
Wow. Yeah, it was amazing. And I think it actually helped change my mind a bit on AI.
I loved his approach to creativity. I just loved his creative process. I love how he was able to articulate the craziness of what goes into the creative process. I love the idea he was able to coherently help me understand the logical bits within the craziness. And I enjoyed his whole approach to creativity.
Yeah.
Then in the AI thing, as you say, it was quite illuminating.
But also, something you've quoted quite a bit is that Ted Horton expression that I'm prepared to do the things that other agencies aren't. What's interesting with PJ, I got a little bit of that. And I got a whole lot of creativity as well. Like just the way he was sort of able to talk about, the idea was the truck. Coke truck's the idea. There was sort of there's a pragmatism.
Fuck you.
There.
It was no, it was more than that. It was a fuck you to the industry. It was a fuck you to everyone who's going to judge me for using a truck.
Yeah.
And ripping off an old ad. There's so much creative process in that.
Yeah, and yet there's this incredible amount of sort of creativity and yeah, it was a really interesting mix, wasn't it?
And even when he said you got to be prepared to sit with whatever you do is going to be dated when it's out.
Yeah,
because that stopped my agency in a couple of ways. Moving forwards on a couple of things, we're going, oh, we can't do that. It's like, bullshit, you can't do that. You just do the best you can at the time you've got with the tools that are available today, and you judge it on that.
Yeah, but I also love the idea of it's never done. Like now we can keep iterating, keep improving it, keep work. Like that's maybe that's super interesting. Yeah, that was awesome, man. I mean, I'm glad I got up at 6 a.m. for that.
All right. Well, until next time, good on you, Brent.